Hey, everybody. Thompson to Clark here, San Francisco Giants podcast. I am Double G alongside my co-host, Brad Evans, and our topic for you today. And if you've been watching these last two games of Giants baseball, this is a timely topic for you. To tank or not to tank? That is the question. Now, tanking in baseball, I'm just using that word because it means something to sports fans. Tanking in baseball doesn't happen the same way as basketball or football because of the way that the draft picks are handled. But, the Giants are, what are we about? A fourth into the season, and they have had just some historically bad luck with injuries right now. They have not yet had their star free agent signing in the offseason, Blake Snell, pitch very well or very much, though I know he pitched in our backyard in San Jose and had an immaculate inning, but that's pitching to single A ball players. But Brad, so let's talk about this. The Giants are still only, 6 games out of the wild card. And like I said, 1/4 of the season. But if you watch these last two games against the Dodgers and you see the players that they are rolling out there because of necessity, Luis Matos, Elio Ramos, guys who we enjoy, but are not going to be competitive in a series against maybe the best team in baseball. What do you think? Can they steer the course? Is there opportunity for the Giants to kind of be okay with the waves right now and still in the second half go gung-ho, which is what our prognostication was before this season started, was they're probably going to be a second half team. Do you still foresee that in the future for them?
Well, I mean, when you look at it, okay, I know you said 6 games out. They're 7 games out from the number 1 wild card seed. Believe it or not, they're only 2.5 games out from the 3rd wild card.
Oh, that's
spot.
what it is.
So,
Okay,
so thank you for 3 wild card spots, Major League Baseball, because without that, we'd be sitting here talking about, okay, let's play the kids, let's start getting ready for next season. But the 3rd wild card spot right now, I think, is held by the Padres, and they're a game under 500. So,
so 22 and 23.
Yeah. So the National League isn't firing on all cylinders at this moment. But I think this team, I mean, we did see some bright spots in the first month of the season. Then the injuries started piling up. When Blake Snell went down, it kind of cascaded from there.
Yeah.
But honestly, when Patrick Bailey went down,
Yes.
it just absolutely, the house of cards just completely collapsed at that point.
And it just showed you how necessary that position is. And you go from, Buster Posey in 2010 until, he retires. Like, you don't have to worry about that position except when he would get dinged up and injured. But then to be able to then say, okay, we had the 1 year of Joey Bart, didn't work out. Let's turn it over to Patrick Bailey. And then he was a really stable presence as a rookie. And then for him to get hurt, and to bring up someone like Jackson Reitz, and this is nothing against Jackson Reitz, but I don't believe he is a major league ball player. It just shows the lack of depth. And, I don't imagine that most teams have 3 major league ready catchers, just right there. But here, let's go through some of the bad luck with this team. So you mentioned Patrick Bailey. We haven't even mentioned a major key cog who separates, I think it's a dislocation is what they said, dislocates his shoulder, chasing a ball and trying to make a crazy grab, Jung-Hoo Lee. Now, the loss of Jung-Hoo Lee, so I was at the ballpark yesterday, and yes, there were majority Dodger fans, which was unfortunate and really sad. But
that's frustrating at this point, too.
The hope is no longer in Ramos and Matos, at least to the fans that were sort of in the vicinity of where we were. The hope was with Jung-Hoo Lee, and it felt a little lost with him not on the field. You can imagine people are already very skeptical about Matt Chapman. His batting average is not helping things out, though we saw some stats data that said that he still has quick hands. He's still swinging the bat quickly. Yeah. So then why is he missing so much? That is the other point. And it's not really about Soler, who is also hurt. And I hope he's not hurt even more. I saw the batting practice fiasco of him hitting a ball off the top of the cage and it donking him right in the head. Wear a helmet, dude.
Yeah. No, I
And
don't think anybody wears helmets in cages, but if there's any indication that you should, I mean that's kind of it right there.
yeah, I
Freak
wouldn't
things
wear a helmet if I was taking batting practice just in sort of like with no coverage above me. But if
Sure,
there was
absolutely.
coverage above me, I would wear a helmet because of
Yeah.
that reason right then and there. And so, like, really the faith with the fan base, and I've been to 2 games in the last 2 weeks, the faith sort of sits with guys like Logan Webb, guys like Jung-Hoo Lee, and when that and it may even be Luciano. We'll see. Luciano is now up. But outside of that, it seems like the fans in the park sort of see this team as, oh, these guys are just going to be here for a little while and then they're going to move on. And we've talked about this over the last couple of years, is the Giants don't have that presence of like, this person is going to be the future of the franchise. And then you get a Jung-Hoo Lee and then he's hurt. And then like you lose a lot of that. So other players that are dinged up, Tom Murphy, who they signed, which allowed them to get rid of Joey Bart. He was going to be a right-handed power source for the days that Patrick Bailey was off, and he jacked up his knee in what was probably a game that should not have been played in Philadelphia. Nick Ahmed, also a little bit of an older player, so injuries are probably not a giant surprise. But I think the thing that frustrated me the most about Ahmed, they don't have a backup shortstop.
Right.
Like there was no depth in that position. I mean, Tyler Fitzgerald is there for that reason, but he's there to spare Nick Ahmed a day or two. He is not there to play every day, and he's not. They had to bring up Casey Schmidt to do that. So the infield depth there is pretty poor. And then we already mentioned Soler and Blake Snell, and then Austin Slater was probably going to be helpful in yesterday's games as the Dodgers were hitting lasers over Luis Matos's head, and for some reason he could not even get a glove on some of those balls.
Completely overmatched in center field. So obviously I think that's going to change in the next couple of games going forward. Probably see Matos more in left field and Elliot Ramos, who's got a great glove. Not the greatest guy with a jump, but I think we might see him in center field, because you can't stick Matos in Oracle Park right field. You can maybe stick Ramos out there. I'm thinking about moving, Yaz to center field, but then somebody's got to play right field. And I don't think Bob Melvin trusts anybody else to play right field at this point. So that's kind of what.
Yeah. Yaz is very valuable in that corner. 100%. And we saw last year, remember, I was at the game where Alex Cobb had the no going into the into the top of the ninth, and the batter hit a hard to detect line drive out to right field, and Luis Matos was in right field, and he got a weird jump on it, and it went over his head. And I'm sure Alex Cobb was like, if Yaz was there, I would have had my no-hitter.
Yeah, 100%.
But the Ramos comment that you just made about Ramos getting a chance to play center field is interesting, because it was the first or second inning, there was a high pop-up into shallow left center field. And the ball hung up enough to where your center fielder coming in and having a better angle usually would call off the left fielder. So Ramos is there and Matos is kind of coming, and I'm like waiting. I'm just waiting for Matos to call him off. Doesn't call him off. Ramos makes the catch. Now that is not a meaningful play overall in the game, but I thought to myself, I was like, wow, a Jung-Hoo Lee would have called the left fielder off, because that is his ball. Any regular center fielder would have called off the left fielder in that case, and he did not, and Ramos just caught the ball. So I thought that was interesting. And then just time after time, he's getting bad reads, he's getting bad jumps. Even when he's getting in position, he's just missing it completely. And I think that told us, okay, like that experiment needs to be done because he is not comfortable out there, and just putting him out there is probably, hurting his own confidence and such. But it does go to tell you that, Luis Matos was once one of their highest prospects, and he is no longer one of their highest prospects. And some of it is that there was another play, and I don't want to pick on Matos, but we're just kind of talking about the young players in the Dodger game on Monday. The Giants, Matos was on second, and somebody hit a deep fly ball into right field. And Matos, I think this was in extra innings. Matos could have easily tagged up and went to third. Like, they wouldn't have even thrown. And he didn't. He just stayed at second on a deep fly ball into right field. And so when you see issues like that, and then you have Tyler Fitzgerald getting picked off after a walk by Wilmer Flores, when you look at stuff like that, it really makes you wonder, like, oh, these players are not as ready for the big leagues as we would have thought. Like, just the whole process of how this works, and how, the usual high prospects, kind of the way that they advance through. But you see it in other teams as well. Like, I think Jackson Holiday came up and he was hitting like under 200, and then he got sent back down. And a lot of the prospects who you expect to come in and play well, they're just not hitting the baseball very well. And there's theories and such, or I think Ken Rosenthal wrote a piece about that recently. So to expect these players, Luciano, Matos, Ramos, Fitzgerald, to kind of be replacement for what was a team that we thought would compete for the wild card, and maybe still can, it may just be a fallacy. And I don't know if we can actually come to that conclusion based on the small amount of games. But man, being there live, they looked hopeless, like almost to the point of where second the Dodgers had 2 runs, in my mind and in my heart, I thought, I think this game is over, and it sucks because it's only like the 3rd inning.
Right. It's not a comeback team. This is not a comeback team, because this is not an offensive team. This is, like, I'm not comparing it to the World Series teams, but I'm comparing it to the World Series teams' offenses. If you go out to an early lead, you got great pitching, you can shut it down. Giants pitching is not there right now. So if the Giants get out to a 3-2 lead, but then they get the 3-2 lead in the 6th inning and they're down 5-3 all of a sudden, this is not the type of offense that is, 2 bloops and a blast. It's just not that. It is a manufacturing offense. And then going back to your point too about the young guys and possibly not being ready. I mean, that's what you hit on earlier. That is the epitome of Major League Baseball tanking. So when you tank in Major League Baseball, you bring up the kids, you bring up the prospects, you bring up the guys that could be starters next season, to give them that time to play at the major league level, to see what it's like to face guys with ungodly arms in right field, to face these breaking balls that drop off the table, and pitchers who have command of those breaking balls. So then when you look at that, you say, are we in a situation where we can do this right now? And that brings us to today's discussion, which is, I mean, it's fantastic. It's a great discussion to have, even in, middle of May, because the Giants went all in on contracts, all in on off-season spending this year, but only virtually 1-year deals for these big names.
Yeah.
To kind of go all in this season. And when they're all hurt, what do you do? Where do you turn? You have to bring up the young kids, and it's not necessarily a tanking situation, but it is giving them, valuable experience going forward. Giants went on Snell, Chapman, Soler, Lee. 3 of those guys aren't on the field. One of them probably won't be on the field the rest of the season, but he will be for the next 5 years. So you have to look at that situation and say, okay, I mean, look at the free agents who are out there next year, though. You got Juan Soto. You're going to have Teoscar Hernandez, who's having another career year because he's in that Dodgers lineup.
Yeah.
You got Pete Alonso is going to be there. Alex Bregman's going to be out there. Garrett Cole has an opt out. It's $36 million though, so he may stay on for that, but he may be able to get a bigger contract.
Yeah. Or just get the Yankees to re-up him for longer term.
Yeah, and then you've got the usual suspects, the usual Boris suspects of Bellinger, Snell, and Montgomery, who I don't think Montgomery's with. I don't think Jordan Montgomery is with Boris anymore, but still. But those three guys will be out there as well.
Right.
So yeah, what do you do the next 3 quarters of the season at this point?
So here's a thought exercise that we can do now. As we had this discussion, and as we watch some of these young players play, some of them may improve. Like Ramos actually does look pretty good out there.
Sure.
Even his at-bats, he doesn't look as overpowered as some of these other guys. He looks like he's a little bit more comfortable. Someone who we've been rooting for the last 7 years to kind of be the guy, right? Like when they drafted him, I think in 2017 or whatever it was. The idea would be, and this doesn't necessarily work the same again in baseball that it does in basketball when you have the trade deadline, but would a team give you a prospect for a half of a season or a fourth of a season of Blake Snell, especially as they were going for it at the deadline? Could you get anything of value for him? Could you get anything of value for Matt Chapman, knowing that there's this unpredictability with their contract, being that it is their option to opt out after this season is over? It is not the team's option. Now, that would be more valuable in the trade market, sure, right? Is if the team had the option, but the player has the option. So if you are, I'm just going to throw a team out because I know they're playing good baseball right now. The Chicago Cubs have not been a great baseball team since they actually, won the World Series. If they were close, if they were like fighting for, one of the 3 wild cards, and they thought that they actually had the goods to make to make a run for the whole thing, and they're like, hey, Blake Snell, second half pitcher. We know he had his struggles, but we also know when it comes to facing the Dodgers, this guy knows how to pitch to the Dodgers. Is there any value in trading him to them, knowing that he could literally just get hurt and then opt into the next season, right? So that is what makes this weird for the Giants. And in this hypothesis of to tank or not to tank, I don't imagine, Soler is probably easier to trade because he actually does have a longer contract. But do you want to, you finally have a guy who can thump and he's been struggling, but just the threat of him, you kind of want that around if you plan on competing. So those are kind of the guys that I look at, but you can also look at somebody like Yaz. You mentioned Yaz. You could look at somebody like Wilmer. I want to see the bat speed test on Wilmer because, man, his bat looked slow last night.
It is low. It is down in the, I think I looked it up today. I think it's down in like the lower 60 mile per hour range, and Chapman is up at like 82.
Yeah.
Luis Arias also has close to the same bat speed as Wilmer Flores. The thing with Arias, though, is he barrels everything up, and Wilmer just does not right now. He's been probably, and I hate to say it because we love the guy, but he's probably been the biggest offensive disappointment of the Giants so far this season. We weren't expecting a ton out of Yaz, not expecting a ton out of Slater, but we were expecting a lot out of Wilmer after the season he had last year. But for him to be struggling so bad right now, that also hurts the team. Not only, Patrick Bailey being hurt, but Wilmer being down, just not hitting also hurts quite a bit. But going to your point of trading players like Snell and possibly Soler and whatnot for prospects, I think the Giants just have to be careful with that, because when you are trying to lure future free agents, they don't want to see that the Giants signed, Snell, Chapman, Soler, and then they trade all three of them when things don't work out close to the trade deadline, especially if you're going to sign a longer deal like Soler, because look at Haniger. I mean, the Giants signed Haniger to a 3-year deal. After 1 year, it's like, you know what? Okay, we're done. We're moving on. If they were to do that with Soler, then word starts to get around, because again, this, yeah, I know it's a business. We talk about baseball being a business and sports being a business, but there's also human emotion tied into this. The players have wives, girlfriends, they have kids, they go to school, they like to settle in places. So if they're signing a little bit of a longer deal, they're looking at a place that they're also going to live for 3 years. They know anything can happen. But you also don't want to cut relations with other future free agents. So that's tough. They just have to kind of tread lightly. Now, if the Giants were just to trade Blake Snell at the trade deadline, they were 10 games under 500, 15 games under 500, and they trade Snell to a contender like the Cubs or the Yankees, and get maybe a low-level prospect back. That is manageable. That's something you understand. That's something Snell understands. He's going to a contender. He wants to pitch in the postseason. Everything works out for everybody. But, in other situations, if you're just cutting bait because you're 15 games under 500 and you want to get some of that money back for the second half of the season and maybe squeeze out a single A prospect, maybe feelings get hurt and maybe word gets around and agents start to look at that and say, hey, we have a bunch of guys that they want to talk about this situation before they come to San Francisco.
The other part, what you just said, is you don't want the Giants to just be a turnstile for free agents who aren't getting the type of money that they feel that they deserve. Because that, I understand this Farhan style of, maybe winning on the margins by grabbing these guys, and not seeing them as long-term investments. But what does it tell the fan base? It tells the fan base that you're signing these guys because, or in a sense, overpaying for these guys because none of the other teams would pay them what they wanted. And you are the second choice for these free agents. And then when it comes to, the opting out, like then you only have them for a year or two. So they're then again choosing another team. And I think you and I understand the reason to do that. We understand the economics for doing that, but it doesn't help build a fan base.
Right.
And again, I don't want to take just what I saw last night or, when I saw them play the other day, a couple weeks ago. I don't want to only use that as evidence, but there are some unhappy fans in the stands. And when you see Dodger Stadium, when you see the Dodger fan base kind of take over Oracle in the way that they did, you kind of get depressed. And just to be dominated the way that they were dominated, 10-2, and I'm really surprised that the Giants even scored at that point, because every time they had a runner on, it was just bad AB after bad AB. Tyro just could not figure out the Dodger starter, Gavin Stone, I believe his name was.
Yeah,
he was getting jam shot, like back to the mat, like just like he was. I was watching him going like, okay, you're the number 2 hitter, which means you're one of the 2 or top best 3 hitters on the team. There's a guy on second. You either need to get him to third or you need to drive him in. Why are you swinging first pitch and just so confused by the pitch that you get jammed and you dribble a ball back to the mound, or you dribble a ball back to the, like, there are just moments where you can just tell, like, these guys are frustrated. They know that they're not hitting. So what happens? You press, you're not going through the at bat in the way that you would do if you were calm and feeling confident.
And then it gets contagious up and down the lineup. And you say, well, this guy couldn't do it, so I have to do it. It's a rally killer offense. I mean, we were chatting last night while you're at the game. I was like, that's great. We got a leadoff hitter on. What are we going to do? We're going to pop up the ball in the infield twice.
Yep.
And then we're going to ground out or strike out. It's just that like you said, I mean, moving runners along, playing station to station baseball. That's what this offense is, but this offense can't even do that right now. And that's the hard thing to watch. I mean, yeah, they scored 4 runs the night before against the Dodgers, but the Giants offense seems to score in 1 inning, 2 innings, and then that's it. This is not an offense, and it's never going to be. So don't get me wrong. I'm not saying this will ever be a Dodgers offense where they can score in any inning with any of the 9 players that they have in the lineup. They can piece together. I mean, we saw it last night in the 9th inning. Double, double, double. I mean,
the sound off their bats was incredible because none of the Giants' contact that they made sounded the same as the contact that the Dodgers made. And that was throughout the entire game. I'm trying to even think of a ball that the Giants hit that was like on the nose. You know, they hit a lot of fly balls that were about 5 feet in front of the warning track. So not even warning track power, about 5 feet in front of the warning track. And so then when I was watching, I was like, okay, maybe it's just the ball's just not traveling. And then Shohei hit one into Bonds territory. And I was like, okay, well, it's not, the ball's not traveling.
Yeah.
So I think our hypothesis that we threw out there, I think the answer to that hypothesis is you're not tanking. You gotta go for what you signed up for. You got to hope that the injuries kind of scale back. You're going to more than likely be without your center fielder. So you have to figure out that situation. What is the solution to being without him? Is it just dealing with Tyler Fitzgerald and having to play him in center field because at least you know he's got the speed to get to balls that some of these other guys may not get to? Is it to move Yaz and Slater back into center? We know that, moving Yaz away from right is probably not the best thing. So they do need a solution, though. I don't know if a trade can be made out there. I don't know if Farhan has some eyes on, players who are maybe at the end of benches or maybe stuck in AAA who could possibly play center field. So that is something that they're going to have to figure out. But if you get Blake Snell back, you get Bailey back, and you kind of start getting your guys all back, you are never going to be back at full strength without Lee. Maybe it's not going to be a full year. Maybe it's only going to be 2 months, and you try and just deal with it. But we're sort of thinking in the worst case scenario because there's not been a lot of news on this injury. But I think they do deserve the opportunity to go for it. But there will be a time, if they continue to lose baseball games and they continue to sink further and further down, where you're going to have to think about doing something else. So before we get out of here, I do want to ask you a question about our guy, Bob Melvin. Bob Melvin, at the end of Monday night's game, he made this throat-cutting gesture. I don't know if you've seen this gesture, but I was watching it.
I have, yeah.
During the game, and I was like, I wonder what he was even talking about. And I thought, man, someone's going to use this as a meme for him to say, like, I'm out of here. And I do wonder, like, now he may just have a fantastic poker face, right? He's been here before. He's been a manager. He's been through the ups, been through the downs, same as a player. He understands the length of the season and how to go through the whole 162 games rather than, doing what we do, which is look at a small sample and go, why can't they do X? But he seems so agitated in his trying to have a poker face. And I kind of just had this thought of, like, if you told Bob Melvin before he signed this deal to be the Giants manager, this is what the first 40 some odd games is going to look like, I wonder if he would have just said, you know what? I'm going to take this year off, because he does look miserable, right? He looks like, oh my gosh, this is like, if you ran this season through some sort of simulator, what we've had so far is on the worst end of it, right? I don't know if it's like the worst case scenario, but it's pretty bad. And I just wonder about how he is going to deal with, with all of this for the whole season.
Well, do you remember at the beginning of the season and the offseason, we kept talking about worst case scenario? This is before the Snell signing, is that if Logan Webb went down, we were screwed.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
Logan Webb's healthy. Everybody else went down.
Yeah.
And so we didn't really think worst case scenario would be 7 starters on the IL. So, and going to that point, I'd say probably about 2 weeks ago when he said, "Hey, we need to get better. We need to play better." And this was right after the Boston series. Then he had the closed door meeting right before the Philly series, and he said, "We need to get better. We were playing bad before this trip. Now we're playing horrible." And then Logan Webb said, we're dog-ish. I'm just not going to say the word because I don't think we can on Bleacher Report. I think on our podcast we can, but I don't know if we can.
We'll be safe. We'll be safe.
Yeah, we'll be safe. But so he said that, and then the quote from Bob Melvin last night was more of like, yeah, we're bad, but we're not at full strength.
Right.
We don't have all of our players right now. So he was kind of holding off on that we're bad, we're terrible right now because he's got all of his kids in the lineup.
Yeah.
So if you've got your kids and you're trying to nurture them and you're trying to bring them along and give them confidence, you don't want to say that they're bad or that they're playing bad. So I think he's found like an internal, and I don't blame him. I think he's found an internal excuse right now to say, well, deep breath, sigh. Oh, well, this is what we have. These are the players that we have. These are not our normal starters. This is the situation. We're playing the Dodgers. They're beating us up.
Yep.
Hey, it is what it is. Now, when pieces start to come back and players start to come back, and if the offense is still doing that, we're going to see Bob Melvin age terribly between now and the end of September. So, and then we may, and maybe we'll talk about this next week, but at that point, we may have a new front office. We never know.
Wow, you went there.
I did.
There is going to be a scapegoat, and I think Bob Melvin escapes. Though I did see a funny tweet the other day that was related to that meme that I was telling you about, where he's like doing that.
Yeah.
And the person said, maybe the manager should just be Dusty Baker.
Wow.
Now, I don't know. I do not want to wish this stress on Dusty. Dusty's a little bit older than
Dusty
Bob Melvin.
Dusty can't take this stress, man.
So, yeah,
he can take winning World Series, but he can't take
yeah.
this stress. Yeah. No, we don't want
All right, now for part 2 of the show, the post Bleacher Report, where we do things like our player of the week and we look at the schedule ahead. For a topic that I was kind of worried about, I think it was pretty good, the first part of the show. We're looking for things that Bleacher Report can actually use for content, so that they're always looking to cut up the shows and put them in different places for their articles and such. So, I mean, I think it was a valid topic of like, the Giants spent all of this money. Now what do they do? And I think we came to the conclusion, like, you're just going to kind of keep trying it and keep hoping that, it figures out. But at some point there will be a time for them to have to decide on the future of this season. But if they play well enough, then they just kind of do what they had always designed to do. And I think that's probably the mentality of the team. So but it's going to be something to watch for, as is how these young players are playing. And I guess if I was to say one more thing about just being there live at the game, what I enjoy most about going to baseball games, other than sort of the on the field, is just kind of catching up with who you're there with. It just becomes like a long conversation because you can watch the game on the field and you can keep having a conversation with whomever you're chatting with. And it's kind of like a really conversational sport. And to overhear the conversations that were happening in our area, it really was like, the Dodgers are going for it and we are eroding our fan base. And I like, that was the sentiment, was the Giants are not doing enough to create new fans and to keep the existing fans that they have. Now, for you and I, that's kind of silly because we're like, why would we ever not just be Giants fans?
There's nothing that will drive us away. I mean, it would have to be something ridiculously extreme. They'd have to move to Brooklyn and rename themselves the Brooklyn Dodgers. And then when at that point, we might be,
Yeah.
time to find a new team. So, yeah.
So, but the thing about it is, those people who may still be Giants fans, but may not find it valuable to go to the games anymore, they are the ones selling their tickets and allowing all the Dodgers fans in the park.
Absolutely.
So at least the ticket buyers, the season ticket holders, those folks are like, Dodgers fans want to give me $200 for my seats, so be it. Like I'm not at the point where I am completely 100% fired up about my team, and I'm just going to make a little bit of cash. Now, when the team is good, and the reason why I say this is because the 49ers travel well as a fan base. When the team is good, they will keep the other team's fans out of their stadium, and they will go travel. And I'm sure that's what's happening with the Dodgers. I'm sure when you go to Dodger Stadium, they're not, there's not a lot of other fans in that park. And then you see they come here and you see a lot of them. If I was to guess, there were pockets of the park where it looked to be 50-50, and then there were pockets of it where it looked to be a little bit more toward the Dodgers. So I don't know for sure, but we were probably, it was either half or we were a little bit of the minority in that park last night.
Yeah, and I'm not going to sugarcoat it, but that sucks, man.
It really does.
It's frustrating. Okay, I'm a Rams fan, so I see every home game.
Yeah.
I see it. You know, when we're playing the Cardinals, it's majority Rams fans. When we're playing almost anybody else, the Steelers, the Packers, the Niners, any team with a rich history of championships who have gained a fan base, over the years by doing things the way they've done them, then they will travel to LA. Because here's the problem with LA, being a football town. The Rams left, then the Raiders left, and they had nobody for years. So what's going to happen to football fans? They're going to find other teams if they're not going to follow the Rams to St. Louis, or the Raiders back to Oakland and then to Las Vegas and then to who knows where, Toronto. I don't know where next. But so the LA fans all became fans of other teams, and then they passed that down to their kids because there was no football for that long. So when you see it happen in baseball, and you see it happen to the Giants, who have been in San Francisco since 1958, it's extremely frustrating to watch. But then you also have to remember, this is 2024. The almighty dollar speaks. If you can resell your ticket for quadruple the price to a Dodger fan, and the Giants are playing this kind of baseball right now, you're probably going to do it. I don't blame all of the Giants fans for doing that. Hell, I mean, they're just trying to make some money. They don't want to go sit out and watch that game, watch what happened last night. You did because you're a Giants fan and you want to go see Giants Dodgers. You went to go see them play. Who was it? Pittsburgh last time?
Yes.
Diamondbacks. And another National League West rival. You want to go see those games. You and I are going to 2 games in July against the Blue Jays. Because we're Giants fans, and
no, I think it was did I go to the Rockies?
I don't remember. I sworn it was I thought it was the Diamondbacks.
Have they played the Diamondbacks yet? I don't think they did play.
Yeah, we did.
They played.
I have to look at the schedule because you're throwing me.
No, I think it was.
Oh, it was the Rockies. No, it wasn't the Rockies.
It wasn't Pirates. Pirates was the weekend.
The Mets.
Yes, that's
exactly
who it was.
Francisco Lindor hit 2 home runs that game.
Yes.
That was ugly. Yes. So I mean, either way, you're going to see your team and you're going to see the other players. When we go see them play Toronto, hey, Vlad, that's going to be fun. And the other great young players that the Blue Jays have, it's going to be fun to watch. And we're not going to sell our tickets because we're going. But again, if you're a season ticket holder and you don't want to go on a Tuesday night to see the Giants get shellacked by the Dodgers, and you could say, oh, this is $100 ticket, but I could sell it for $400, $500. and then we could have a nice weekend in Napa. Let's do that.
That is part of the calculus still. So I went with my friend Lindsay last night. She has season tickets. She's her pops has had the premium club level seats, I think, since the park opened. So she's had her family has had those seats for the last 24 years. So she said to me that last year she made about $1,000 on selling the tickets, but then she herself went to about 10. So she still came out ahead because those tickets are more, they're probably close to $100, but if they're on the secondary market, they're going to be a little bit more. And she was saying how this year it's been really hard to sell any tickets, and that isn't great, but the opportunities are there when you have those like national fan bases. So the Dodgers, obviously,
the Cubs travel really well too.
The Cubs, any American League team, we went to Boston, so we didn't get to see the Red Sox, but like when some of these teams that don't usually come to the park, the Yankees will be here at the end of the month. I'm sure she'll be able to sell all 3 of those games for premium pricing. And the reason to do that is because she's going to take a hit when when the Astros come to town, or when the non-Shohei Angels and non-Mike Trout Angels come to town. She's going to take a hit. So she kind of has to, right? She kind of has to sell those tickets just to make sure she doesn't lose her rear end on some of those other games. So yeah, that's definitely a thing. But okay, so let's do our player of the week, and then we'll look ahead to the rest of this week. And then, now we're doing 3 shows in consecutive weeks on Wednesdays because of our agreement with Bleacher Report. So today's show, next Wednesday's show, the following Wednesday's show. And as far as we know, we don't have any more scheduled with Bleacher Report after that. So we'll get back to our Monday schedule unless things change. And like we said, if something happens, it's like super duper important that we need to get back on, we'll do a quick hit here and there. But all right, what's up with player of the week?
Yeah, so you're saying we might be back Friday night when Snell throws a no-hitter? I mean, it
sounds like he's going to pitch in AAA, I think.
Yeah, but he'd also have to go 9 innings.
Yeah, true.
So that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
So our player of the week, I might as well just call him our player of the year at this point. LaMonte Wade Jr. Is our player of the week. 187 WRC plus. It's weighted run creation plus. One of our favorite stats because it kind of takes into account everything about the hitter that he can control when it comes to creating runs. And this team is not creating a ton of runs, but LaMonte Wade Jr. is helping to actually do that. So on the week, this was again Monday to Monday. So I think it was the 6th through the 13th of May. He hit 320. He had almost a 25% walk rate at 23.5. And he hit a home run, had 6 RBIs, and then scored twice. So LaMonte Wade Jr., with his continued massively crazy good offense and getting on base, his on base percentage for the week, of course, was 500, which is what he's near anyways overall on the entire season. He is our player of the week. I wanted to see his on base percentage for this season so far. He is at 473. His career high was 373 last year. Well, I apologize. His career high, 2021, played in 109 games. Nope, that's right. I was right. Looking at the wrong thing. Career high, 2023, 373 on base percentage. He's blowing that out of the water so far this year.
And he may be a guy, if the Giants ever wanted to sell, he may be actually... obviously Logan Webb would be off limits. Jordan Hicks would be off limits as well because he's so young. Kyle Harrison as well. But if they were selling off for prospects or whatever, he might be the most valuable guy on the team right now in that aspect.
Yeah, he could be. Let's look at his, because I think he's still arbitration.
Is he eligible for
the next? Yeah, so that's going to be a tough one. Farhan doesn't like to give up controllable players. He is 2006 or 2026. He's going to be a free agent. So he still has one more controllable year after this year. So you're getting a year and a half of, an on-base machine. And he's making what, 3.5 million this year. So that's really not a whole lot of anything.
Yeah. All right, schedule for the rest of this week. So the Giants, as we're recording this, the Giants have one more game against the Dodgers. So this show will actually be out before that game starts, but people may not even hear it or see it until after that game. So we don't know what happens there. But then the Rockies come into town. And I would say at the perfect time, because they kind of need a Rockies-like team, as they try and get healthy again. And with Bailey going back on the IL for what they thought was like a head cold, and it turns out it's probably related to his original concussion. And then you have the Pirates who come into town, and the Pirates are sort of the same team as the Giants right now. Their run differential isn't quite as bad as the Giants, but they're essentially a similar team. So you have two series is upcoming against teams that you should be competitive with. Now, if you're not competitive with these teams, then that is going to tell us something for sure.
Yeah.
But that is the rest of the week. And then early next week before we record, it's just the Pirates is early next week. But you're going into Pittsburgh. So when we record next week, what's actually going to be kind of interesting is when we record next week for Bleacher Report, it will be like an hour or so, an hour and a half essentially before Pirates Giants play. No. I'm sorry.
No, they put up the Pacific. 340. So, that's going to be a tough series too, because Paul Skeens is up. And,
it'll be fun to watch. Right?
Yeah, he does have some control issues we saw in his first game, so it's kind of interesting to see how he does in his second start. And then maybe he'll line up. See, what's today? He threw on Saturday. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. He would throw again on Thursday. 1, 2, 3, 4. He could throw the first game of that series. Depending on how things fall, the first or the second game of the series against us. We're having a hard time hitting fastballs down the middle.
Except if you're Casey Schmidt and you look horrendous on two sliders in a row.
Yes.
And then they throw you one right down the middle, which was literally the only pitch you were going to even come close to, and you hit it to the fence.
You had to thank the Reds pitcher for that one, because I thought, man, he's just making him look absolutely silly with the slider. And then all of a sudden he goes, I think I'll throw him a fastball. Hey, thank you. God. Let's end this game.
Yeah. Didn't even need it. Like, I understand he probably wanted to throw a waste fastball and get him, get him swinging at the high fastball and end the game, but just go back to slider. Casey would have been turned into dust after that pitch.
Oh God. Yeah.
So Rockies, Pirates, the next two series then you have the Mets after that, but we'll talk about that next week. The Dodgers leaving town, just very happy to see that. Though my Dodger buddy,
soon enough,
my Dodger buddy who I check in with, and he's living life right now, but he is still skeptical with the bullpen and with the ability of the starting pitchers, because he believes that Dave Roberts babies the starting pitchers a little bit too much. And he says that, they will throw bullpen games just randomly to give the starters like an extra day of rest. And he's like, the guy only threw 80 pitches. Like, what do we need the extra day of rest for? So this is still the Dodgers' strategy with the starting pitching, which has come back to bite them in the rear end, every single postseasons except for the Mickey Mouse one. And that's his worry, because and if I'm a Dodger fan and you pretty much have the perfect offensive team, the worry is when is Tyler Glasnow going to get injured? Because we expect it to happen, right? Yamamoto, when is he going to wear down? And then you don't have a bullpen that you truly, truly believe in. So that is, if you are looking for chinks in the armor for the Dodgers, that's where you should look. And but man, watching that offense, there was no holes in it. There was no opportunity for the Giants to go, okay, let's pitch around this guy to get to this guy.
And they will go nuts at the trade deadline too. If their bullpen continues to be this rough, they are going to make some massive moves for bullpen help. I mean, we could be looking at them picking up 2 or 3 closers. You could be looking at Mason Miller. You could be looking at, Helsley from St. Louis, and they could pick up 2 or 3 closers and then have them pitch the 7th, 8th, and 9th and just be complete lights out. So.
You know, we were speaking of closers, or as you were speaking of closers, I thought about another high trade value candidate, but again, ARB eligible. Doval. If you're a bad team, what do you need a great closer for? He and Lamont Wade would be your most valuable trade pieces, but you need to get high return because of the arbitration eligibility that they have. So that would be the other guy.
That and again, then we talk about player relations and everything else, coming down the line. Because Doval is kind of still the closer of the future. I mean, it's not even the future yet for Doval. That's how young he is and how, few years he's actually been in the role. But do you start to give Taylor Rogers some high leverage closing situations against left-handers and kind of showcase him a little bit and say, hey, we've got this guy, this left-hander that a lot of people could use in the bullpen? Because I think you're more likely to move a lefty if you're out of it, because so many people will covet a lefty over a righty. But yeah, I mean, there's so many different things you can do. And then, unfortunately, maybe by the third Bleacher Report show of this month, maybe we're looking at the roster and saying, okay, who's most likely to get moved?
Yeah. It's crazy to think about so early, but we also talked about this early in the season, is the Dodgers are going to create distance early on, and they're not really your competition. Your competition is that cluster of wild card teams, and you have to sort of look at it that way.
Sure.
All right, we'll be back next week. So Wednesdays for at least the next couple of weeks here. So a little bit of a different thing. And on some of our other shows, I believe Brian and I are doing Thursday, the Warriors. The Golden State Valkyries is the new WNBA team in the Bay Area next year. Caitlin Clark also played her very first game, and the WNBA has kicked off. The NBA playoffs is in full steam ahead with the conference semifinals, and then thinking about possibly, now depending on when people listen to this, we want winners. The 49ers show. The NFL schedule comes out today in full, so we may do a show. Rod and I may do a show Wednesday night live stream. So it's not set in stone. So next 2 days we should have content on this channel. And then again, Brad and I will be back next Wednesday. Okay, so for Brad, I am Double G. We will see you when we see you. Peace out.
Peace.